Shalom, and happy Hanukkah to all. This week we are reading Parshat Miketz, meaning at the end of the 10th Torah portion of the book of Bereshit, Genesis, beginning in chapter 41, continuing with the remarkable destiny-charged account of Yosef and his brothers. Parshat Miketz is always read on the Shabbat of Hanukkah, either on the first or second Sabbath of Hanukkah, when applicable. And as we've learned, this month of Kislev is the month of dreaming. And the portions containing the dreams to be found in the book of Genesis are all read during this month. As the portion of Miketz opens, Pharaoh is dreaming and Yosef is in prison. As the Holy Zohar puts it, Yosef was alienated from his brothers on account of his own dreams and was elevated above his brothers and above the entire world through Pharaoh's dream. Pharaoh's dream will now become the instrument through which Yosef's wisdom will shine forth. For as the classic chapters of Rabbi Eliezer states, Yosef had divine inspiration from the time he was a young boy till the day he died. Pharaoh dreamed two dreams. In the first, 7 beautiful, fat, and healthy cows emerged from the river, grazing in the marshland. Their appearance was followed by 7 lean cows, really ugly and unhealthy looking. The lean ones devoured the fat ones, but remained as lean as they were. In the second dream, 7 full, robust ears of grain rise up on one stalk, or branch, and afterwards 7 thin and emaciated ears, scorched by the east wind, grow up after them. As in the first dream, again, the emaciated ears devour the 7 healthy and full ears. In the morning, Pharaoh was agitated. He asked his advisors, all the necromancers and wise men of Egypt, to interpret his dream, but they had no success. Why they had no success? Well, Yosef was able to correctly interpret the dream, and what all this has to do with Hanukkah is the main thing that I would like to speak about today. But first, if you would, I'd like to briefly review the events of the Parsha. Just then, as Pharaoh is crestfallen over his dreams, the chief cupbearer recalls Yosef, speaking of him in a degrading, unappreciative manner, a Hebrew youth, a slave, who correctly interpreted his dream and that of the chief butler 2 years prior to this. Pharaoh immediately sends for Yosef. Yosef is released from jail, cleans up nicely, and finds himself standing before the king of Egypt. But why, you may ask, was Yosef not given the opportunity to provide the interpretation immediately? Why did Hashem, in his infinite wisdom, have Yosef's debut wait until after the failure of the magicians? The Midrash states, said the Holy One, blessed be He, if Yosef would have interpreted the dream first, he would not have been appreciated. The necromancers would have said, oh, if you would have asked us first, we would have told you the same thing. So Hashem waited till they tried and failed, and then Yosef was brought forth, for there was none other to interpret it to Pharaoh. And understand that God arranged it thus, so that Pharaoh would dream just as the time would arrive for Yosef to emerge from prison. For Yosef actually only deserved to be in prison for 10 years, since he spoke ill of his 10 brothers. But another 2 years were added to his sentence because he asked the chief cupbearer not to forget him, but to remember him to Pharaoh. But it's not so simple. Not so simple as to say that those additional 2 years were a punishment. Nothing is haphazard. As the Midrash continues, why were these 2 years added? So that Pharaoh would have his dream, and through his dream, Yosef would become great. Yosef explains to Pharaoh that it's God who will provide the interpretation, not him. Then he immediately interprets the dream. The land of Egypt is soon going to experience 7 years of great plenty, followed by 7 years of terrible famine, a famine so severe that the years of plenty will be totally forgotten. Inexplicably, Yosef then offers unsolicited advice. A home front command must be established. A system of preparation overseen by one man who in turn shall appoint other overseers must be put in place during the years of plenty. Grain should be gathered during the years as a reserve to be used during the years of famine. Pharaoh is very impressed with Yosef, appoints him as his second in command. Yosef is dressed in royal garments and given absolute command over the land of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Events transpire exactly as Yosef foresaw. The 7 years of plenty arrive, during which Yosef gathers all the grain, and afterwards the heavy famine arrives. Meantime, during the years of plenty, Yosef marries Asnat, the adopted daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, who, according to tradition, is none other than his own cousin, the daughter of Dinah, who was born of Dinah's rape by Shechem, And Yosef and Asnat have two children, Menashe and Ephraim. According to tradition, it was on Rosh Hashanah that Yosef was freed from prison and given the royal commission. And as soon as he was freed, the land of Egypt began to flow with blessing. The grain was blessed on Yosef's account. And Yosef, with great wisdom, compassion, humility, and understanding, built storehouses in every city and filled them with every type of grain and produce, and sent out word to all of Egypt by order of Pharaoh, prepare yourselves for the upcoming years of famine. He gathered so much food that it could no longer be counted. And when the 7 years of famine commenced, as Yosef had said, the famine descended immediately and suddenly. In one fell swoop, while the Egyptians were still at table, the bread on their tables rotted, the flour wormed, all grain that was privately stored rotted, except for what Yosef himself had saved. If an Egyptian citizen himself tried to store food, it would only rot away, because it was Joseph's purity and righteousness that preserved all of Egypt's provisions. That was the preservative. And on account of his purity, he was able to sustain the entire population. He was pure, and everything he touched remained pure. Ultimately, he kept the whole world alive. No wonder, in a reference to Joseph's attribute of purity, the Holy Zohar states, the righteous Joseph is the pillar of the world. Yosef gathered inestimable amounts of provisions. The famine reaches epic proportions, and all of Egypt came to Yosef to buy provisions. The famine spreads all over the earth, reaching the land of Canaan as well. In the second year of the famine, Yaakov sends Yosef's brothers to Egypt to buy food. They come before Yosef and bow down to him, just as he foresaw they would in his boyhood dream. Now he recognizes them, but they do not recognize him. Yosef has a plan to test his brothers' love, to see if they have repented of their sin. He accuses them of being spies, very rough to them. He imprisons Shimon. He supplies them with grain and sends them home to Canaan, while warning them that he will only receive them again if they bring their brother Benjamin. He sends them home with their money surreptitiously returned to their sacks. When the brothers return home and Yaakov hears the man's demand to see Benjamin, he refuses to send Benjamin, saying, "You've bereaved me. Joseph is gone, Shimon is gone, and now would you take away Benjamin? Upon me it has fallen." Chapter 42 and verse 36. But when their supplies are used up, Yaakov agrees to send Benjamin after Yehudah accepts responsibility for his welfare. The brothers arrive in Egypt and again are brought before Yosef. He frees Shimon. Yosef has a hard time hiding his emotions upon seeing Benjamin, goes off to a side room to cry. Inscrutably incognito, he sits down with his brothers for a meal and again supplies them with much grain. But he gives instructions for his silver goblet to be hidden in Benjamin's bag. The men were sent off the next morning, but upon Yosef's instructions, they were pursued and apprehended right outside the city. They were accused of stealing the goblet, and they vigorously denied this, saying that whoever took it should be put to death, while the others will be the master's servants. The men are searched, and the item was found in Benjamin's sack. It was declared that Benjamin, in whose possession the goblet was found, must remain as Yosef's slave, while the brothers could return to their father. Yosef sees that Judah's response to the crisis of Benjamin is quite different than it was when the brothers were aligned against him. Judah acknowledges all of this as divine retribution for the earlier sin which the brothers committed against Yosef. At the Parsha's conclusion, we are left with a real cliffhanger. With Parshat Miketz falling as it does during Hanukkah, our sages maintain numerous traditions that illustrate how Parshat Miketz is replete with allusions to Hanukkah. For example, our sages famously interpret the word shnatayim, 2 years, appearing in the very first verse of our portion, and it came to pass at the end of 2 years to the day. They point out that the Hebrew letters of the word shnatayim form an acronym, which stands for the words Smol Neirot Tadlik Yamin Mezuzah, meaning the candles should be kindled to the left of the door with the mezuzah to the right, reflecting the halachic preference of kindling the Hanukkah lights to the left of the door so that one is surrounded by mitzvot, the flames on the left and the door's mezuzah on the right. And for example, as the Baal HaTurim commentary cites, there are 3 places in the Torah where the word kaneh, meaning branch, appears, twice here in reference to Pharaoh's dreams, and once relating to the menorah. And the commentary concludes with the words, "For satiation brings light to the world." These words of the Baal HaTurim, satiation brings light to the world, can be seen as an allusion to Hanukkah. The hidden light of the menorah begins to shine through the dream of Pharaoh. He sees 7 stalks of wheat, and we see 7 branches of the menorah in the Holy Temple, meaning perhaps this is the hidden meaning of the words rising in one kaneh, one stalk or branch. The kaneh, branch of Pharaoh, rises up later in history to become the kaneh, the branch of the menorah. The branch of Pharaoh's dream evolves into the branch of the menorah that brings light to the world. But aside from these symbolic interpretations, open up your heart in the deepest way, because there is a deep connection between our portion of Miketz and the essence of Hanukkah. And I mean, what it really boils down to is that there's a deep connection between Yosef's struggle to maintain his Jewish identity in the midst of Egypt and our forefathers' struggle to maintain and to fight for the survival of Judaism in the face of the onslaught of the Greek oppression. Of Pharaoh's dream we read, "And it came to pass in the morning, his spirit was agitated. So he sent and summoned all the necromancers of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh related his dream to them, but none could interpret them for Pharaoh." Rashi explains that actually there were plenty of interpreters and interpretations, but not for Pharaoh. Rashi, quoting a famous teaching of the sages of the Talmud, states simply, "Their voices didn't even enter into his ears," unquote. And he would get no satisfaction from their interpretations. He wouldn't accept what they were saying, because they were saying stuff like, "Oh, you're going to give birth to 7 daughters and you'll bury 7 daughters." But open your heart in the deepest way. The sages' words are so deep. What is the significance of this very skewed and very specific, if inaccurate, interpretation? 7 daughters you will have and 7 daughters you will bury. Well, the entire council of all of Egypt's magicians and sages couldn't put Pharaoh's mind at ease. Hashem was saving Yosef for him. Hashem wanted him to hear what Yosef had to say. The Egyptian outlook was very narrow, and their interpretation was so obviously flawed that the words wouldn't even enter Pharaoh's ears. This is because the Egyptian mindset was deterministic. The definition of this adjective, deterministic, relates to the philosophical doctrine that all events, including human action, are ultimately determined by causes, regarded as external to the will. The worldview, hyped by the world superpower that was Pharaoh's Egypt, couldn't entertain the possibility of a reality wherein thin cows could devour fat and strong cows, nor was the Egyptian mindset capable of comprehending the dream of the ears of grain. What this really means is that the Egyptians, like the Greeks who worship the physical and the external, can't consider the possibility of a reality wherein the weak could best the strong, the few could be victorious over the mighty. The Greeks were a great and mighty force, but in their Weltanschauung, they couldn't accept that a little bit of oil could last for 8 days, since they put all their emphasis on external strength. Egyptian culture, too, was unable to interpret dreams of the power and quality of inner strength. How could Pharaoh's magicians have been able to understand his dream? The world of the Egyptians, like the mythological pantheon of Greek gods, was a world fought over by conflicting powers. Powers of light versus powers of darkness, benevolent gods versus malevolent gods. This is a world of divided reality, what the Torah refers to as a world of separation. In that bleak world, man is a pawn, perhaps even the prize, in a game being waged by vying powers. Thus, you will give birth to 7 daughters, and you will bury 7 daughters. The kind gods will bless you with 7 daughters, but the vicious gods will kill them. In this determinist vortex, man is a victim of fate, caught in the middle of a struggle between forces and has no opportunity to be a partner, let alone to aid in the fixing of creation. There's no meaning, no direction, no divine providence, just endless eternal battles between forces of good and forces of darkness. This is the common thread between the Egyptians and the Greeks, between Yosef in Egypt and the story of Hanukkah. Neither believed that Hashem runs the world and that all is brought about by him exclusively and as a part of his plan, as beautifully stated by the prophet Isaiah chapter 45 verses 6 and 7, in order that they know from the shining of the sun and from the west that there is no one besides me. I am Hashem and there is no other, who forms light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates evil. I am Hashem, who makes all these. Open up your heart in the deepest way. Israel's life, as manifest by Yosef's life story, as manifest by Yosef's life story, and is celebrated on Hanukkah, is a reflection of the unity of Hashem. What do we say? We say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear Israel, Hashem, who is our God, is Hashem, who is one. There's nothing else. Both the good and the bad are manifestations of God's orchestration. The magicians who try to outrun and outmaneuver and manipulate the gods who live in that world of separation, and all those who feel themselves constantly to be victims caught in a struggle between opposing forces who believe that fate is cruel and all one can do is hopefully run away from it, they can't possibly correctly interpret Pharaoh's dream. Only Joseph, who acknowledges, believes, and sees Hashem's hand in everything, and understands that even his own troubles that have come upon him are part of divine providence, and understands that we were placed in this world in order to be given an opportunity to actively participate in tikkun, in fixing the world, he understands. What does he say? That Pharaoh's dreams are one. Bad and good, fat cows and lean cows are all from Hashem. And because Yosef, like his father Yaakov, is a fixer, now all of a sudden we can understand another mystery. Why did Yosef offer an unsolicited advice as to what should be done? Chutzpah of this young boy. He was asked for an interpretation of the dream and nothing more, yet without being asked, immediately he moves swiftly and seamlessly to the solution to Pharaoh's problem. Because Yosef is the opposite of everything that Egypt represents. To him is given the secret of interpretation of the meaning of the human condition. Because the knowledge that Hashem, our God, is Hashem who is one, is the answer to Pharaoh's dreams. And that knowledge also took Yosef to the next stage, the stage of action, as true knowledge should. And it was that same knowledge of Hashem's oneness that powered the Hashmonai priests to victory over the forces of mighty Greece. The Greeks tried to convince Israel that belief in one God is an illusion, that only the physical and the demonstrable is true. But Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, means that only Hashem is reality. All else is illusion. That is what both Yosef and the light of Hanukkah teach us as they so magnificently converge in Parshat Miketz. Shabbat Shalom and Happy Hanukkah.